back here with a quick message for any first-year applicants interested in applying to Viterbi School of Engineering for fall 2025. You still have time to apply. Our regular decision deadline is coming up on January 15th at 11:59 p.m. in your time zone. All common applications must be submitted by that deadline. Transcripts can come in after the deadline. Also, in order for us to see your application, you must select a Viterbi major as a first choice. That's any major starting with VSE. We can't wait to learn about you. Now let's get that podcast started.
This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Hi, everyone. My name is Safi Patel. I'm your other co-host. I'm a senior studying computer science and doing my master's in engineering management.
So, Safia, just before we started recording, you mentioned that you're having some throat and voice issues here today. I'm sorry to hear that. You want to tell everybody what's going on? What happened? What's going on?
I'm honestly not sure. I thought it was just sickness because I feel like everyone's been getting sick over the past 2 weeks, but I think it's just my asthma has turned into like a sore throat and I have a little bit of a cough, but it's been here for like the last week. So all of my new classes, meeting new people, I've been sounding not the best, not the best. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you might want to, if you haven't done so already, you might want to at least go to urgent care to check it out. Because if it has been persisting like that, go get that nebulizer.
Oh, yes. I haven't had a nebulizer since I think sophomore year of high school after basketball practice.
Well, with the air quality in LA over the last week and a half, you might have been triggered and you might have a little bit of at least inflammation, if not something in there. I mean, I only say this because my wife deals with this and she's been dealing with it for the last week. She has bad asthma. It's been triggered and sometimes it gets caught up and it creates something worse in her. And so it's then it could be like an infection and you don't want to deal with that. So you could be fine, but dealing with something that could actually use some medication, I'd go check it out.
Yeah, totally.
But I'll try to talk as much as possible here, but jump in.
Of course.
So, for all transparency's sake, we are recording this on Friday, January 17th. This is being released on Sunday, January 19th.
Yeah.
Last week was our first episode back. I know that Safi had some technical issues dealing with our introduction, so I apologize to everyone out there.
My bad.
We had an introduction, and we had addressed at that time just all the craziness that's been going on with all these tragic wildfires throughout Los Angeles, and what we knew at the time and what we know now. We're at a different place now, and we just kind of refer to the ideas of air quality. Obviously, I think everyone knows what's been happening for the last 2 weeks here in Los Angeles. It's been heartbreaking to see what's happening. All of us know multiple people that have been affected by these wildfires, in some situations losing their entire house and everything that they've ever owned. And we have multiple faculty that are dealing with this. We have a number of students that are dealing with this, staff members. It's a very, very challenging time, and everybody is kind of dealing with it day by day. Personally, and Safi, we talked about this as well. Both of us are very lucky that our families were not affected by this. We live in parts of the area that were not affected, but a lot of people were. And it's just it's unheard of. It's unprecedented. It's tragic, and it's really, really scary to see all the things that have happened. But to be clear about something, and something I want to make sure that everybody understands, it's come to my attention based on the amount of people that have reached out to me in my personal life, that a lot of people do not know the kind of the geographic landscape or the topography of LA. And when someone says you live in LA, and a lot of people don't know where that is. And on the news, accurately so, this is really, really close. And it hit some highly populated areas in LA, in the Pacific Palisades and the Eaton Fire up in Altadena and Pasadena area, and some other smaller ones that have kind of hit around the area. But to make sure people know, the university is almost entirely unaffected by this. There has been no change to our operational schedule, albeit, case by case. Some faculty have had some issues because obviously if they've lost their home, they can't, we might be bringing in some guest lecturers for a time period to figure that out, to help them figure out their timing, and dealing with students one by one and getting them the support that they need to get back on their feet. But it's not affecting the campus, our operations, our ability to maintain the continuity of the educational process. I know I've gotten a lot of questions on like, will the university shut down? And there's obviously some other universities that are closer to these fires that have had some main issues and figuring out how to like maintain their operations, but we are not. And so I want to make sure everybody knows that. And we have no anticipation of anything affecting us. We did deal with 2 weeks, as we mentioned, with some really terrible air quality where a lot of people were affected by that. And just trying to balance that out. Where we are now is that things have, I think, we don't know, we're on the other side of this, as far as like the advancement of further fires. But that means that everybody who has been affected doesn't mean that they're on the other side of this. They're right in the middle of it. And rebuilding or, getting their lives back together. It's really inspiring to see the amount of, just upwards projection of community support that has happened, and volunteerism and supporting one another. And that's been really great to see and exciting to be involved in. It's just, it's crazy. I know a lot of USC students have gotten together and done some things. There's a USC fund for faculty and students and staff affected by this. There's a lot of things that are going on, which are really a silver lining to this horrible storm cloud that we've been going through. But there's been a lot of outreach. I should make sure I say that we've gotten a lot of outreach in our email account for people, expressing, their concern and condolences, and I appreciate all that. And I would only say that if you are looking for something to do, there are plenty of different things to donate to, whether that's monetarily or with your time. The American Red Cross is a big one, Cal Fund, and the firefighters that are doing everything that's out there as my personal recommendations. But yeah, whatever anybody can do is going to be big, because people have lost a lot, and it's going to take years to get anywhere near where we were. I heard on the news, again, they're all guessing, but 2 to 5 years before any of this starts to get back to normal as far as these neighborhoods are concerned and rebuilding. So anyway, there's that. Also at the top here, before we even get into this episode, and I'm sorry I'm taking over this episode, this is coming out at exactly the time that we are releasing the early action admission decisions. Again, full transparency, it's the morning of Friday, January 17th. Those decisions are about to be released in about 4 hours-ish is what we're looking at.
Very soon.
Very, very soon. It's coming out. Lots of meeting I was in right before this was just going over some of those things. And kind of figuring out this one versus that one and this other things, and make sure that everything's in place. But it looks like it's all locked in now. And so we're going to be releasing early action decisions. And everyone gets very, very nervous. There's, by now you should have received an email if you applied early action that says there's an update to the status of your application. We do not email decisions. We just say, check your portal. Everybody gets the same email. And a small percentage of students will be admitted at this rate. So we're talking about a couple hundred students after about 8,000 total early action applications. And so that's a small percentage of students will be admitted. And the overwhelming majority of those applicants will be given the option to defer their application. And so there will be no bad news distributed today. So they have the opportunity to defer their application. And that's just going into their application saying, yes, I would like my application to be deferred. They do need to go into the portal and select that box. And if you have fall grades, submit those, but nothing else. No letters of continued interest, no meetings, no requests, no portfolios, no nothing, no adding. We got the application. We're confident that that's going to be a good representation of you as an applicant in this next round of admission that we will be conducting, we being the university. So just keep that in mind. It really, really wastes a lot of your time and our time if you start calculating and formulating letters and things that you want to do. We don't want letters of recommendation. We don't want any of that stuff. We have your application. That's what we need. If we ever need anything else further from you, it's likely going to be a transcript for your fall grades. We'll contact you, but you can get ahead of that and just put that in now if you want to inside of your portal, but nothing else. Okay. just let it sit. You don't want to keep contacting people. It's not in your best interest. Just let the application sit. All you need to do is make sure you submit that deferral. And then those that have just completed their applications for the regular decision pool, we'll take all the people that are being deferred, put you all together with the regular decision applications. That's a new applicant pool that we'll be reviewing. And then we'll be going through, and I say we, it's the university. The university will be making those admission decisions by the last week in March. So right toward the end of March. So you have till then to get to that point. And again, if you've applied, same rules, nothing extra. Don't keep sending stuff. Don't keep doing those things. Just let it go. If we need anything from you, we will ask you from it. If you do have anything updated as far as a full transcript, then go ahead and get that in. That's where we lie. If you are listening to this and you just got admitted, congratulations to a few of you that are out there. That's really, really exciting. You will also have received a couple other emails with invitations to some events. We have some virtual events that happen like right away in like the next week or so. And we want you to come to those. That's a great way to do that. What I don't want you to do is start booking a trip to campus. Because I do not want you to visit campus just on your own. We want you to come to a specific event that we will have ready for you as an admitted student, where you have the opportunity to meet faculty and see facilities and hang out with our current students. We do all of those in April. It's in your portal. You can see the dates. You can register for those, and I recommend you do so. All of those are open to you to register for after you've been admitted. Sign up for those and start making your travel plans to come to one of those events. It's in April. We have about 5 different events during the week, and we've got one event during the weekend. We will also have, if you are unable to visit campus, a number of different events around the country and around the world. If, for example, you live in New York and you can't come to us, we'll have a New York event. You don't need to come to all of these things. We just offer up as many as possible so that you have an opportunity to engage with us, ask questions, learn about your opportunities to make that decision. Because in addition to being admitted to USC, we're confident you're going to be admitted to a number of other great institutions, and you need to compare and contrast and find out the right one that's for you. So that's why these events exist. It's not a good comparison if you just come to campus and show up one day. It's not a good comparison if you just take the campus tour. The campus tour is not what you need. You don't need to know what year a building was built. You don't need to know the amazing trees and landscaping of the campus. I'm sure that's great, but you probably want to dive into things and learn about your curriculum and your experience and talk to our current students and talk to faculty and chat further and deeper. That's what our admitted student programs do. A campus tour is not going to give that to you. And if you come for a campus tour and you try to set these up on your own, we're not going to be able to accommodate you because we're focusing all of our energies on putting together good campus events for you to do that. And we've got those dates set up. So please do that. Okay. This is a really long intro, and we haven't even gotten to our actual point of this guest, but here
sure
we
they
are.
appreciate it.
I hope so. I don't know. So without further ado, we're going to get into our guest, and then we'll talk a little bit on the other end. Marcelle Phené. Marcelle is a fantastic person. I hope you're going to enjoy this conversation. She is just a ball of sunshine and always has been. You'll notice the minute you get into the conversation. Marcelle is a graduate of our program in civil engineering. And so she studied civil engineering, got her bachelor's degree in civil engineering, went on and did an amazing career that included not only just some really cool companies that she's actually working on now, which we'll get into, but also spent time in the U.S. Navy. And so she is a veteran, and she talks about her work in the U.S. Navy and what she was doing as essentially her engineering background and the civil engineering corps officer school that she went to, and talked all about her opportunities in the Navy and then what she's done since the Navy, and now currently in the Marshall School of Business at USC MBA program for veterans. And so now she's taken her civil engineering degree, her experience in the Navy, and her experience owning a business, and now wrapping up her MBA, her master's in business administration, which we talk all about in addition to all of her experiences that happened as an undergraduate student at USC. Without further ado, let's get out of the way and hand it over to my discussion with Marcelle, which was recorded just before the holidays in December. And we hear all about her experiences. Then Safi and I will be on the backside to catch you up on some other stuff. Hello.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you? Sorry for the delay.
That's quite all right.
Look at you. You got the setup and the pictures and the pennant behind you. It's so formal. Look at all this. Wearing your USC shirt, your USC pin, just all there.
Got to represent.
It's so good to see you. How is everything?
Everything is really well. I'm doing really great and super happy to be here. I was so glad that you reached out. It was
Yeah.
such a pleasant surprise.
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to spoil that because I do have a story as to, we talked about real briefly over email about how you came to mind. But you're like, I've been keeping a low profile. I'm like, you haven't. I'm going to tell you why. Um, anyway, Marcel, it's so good to see you. Remind me, you graduated in 2000, what? I don't remember now.
10,
2010?
10. Yes.
Holy cow, it's been that
I
long?
know. I know.
2010. I can't keep track of anything anymore, and I can't believe that life goes back that far.
Yeah, it hurts my brain to remember that, but but I remember you.
Oh, well, that's good. I hope it's good. So Marcel, 2010, let's have a brief little background introduction for the audience. You graduated in 2010 in civil engineering, correct?
Correct.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit about like where did you come from? I seem to remember Fresno is where you came
Yes,
from.
that's exactly it. I grew up in Clovis, Fresno
Clovis.
County. I went to Buchanan High School and graduated from there and had aspirations to come to USC and study engineering. And so that's what I did.
Awesome.
And I ended up I graduated in 2010 and from there I joined the Navy.
All right. So you're Marcel, you're in high school, you're in Clovis, you're at Buchanan High School in Clovis, California. There's so much to talk about in your future, but what is high school Marcel like? What are you involved in? How do you spend your time? And ultimately, how do you find yourself interested in civil engineering, or did you know? And secondly, or thirdly, at this point, how did you get to USC? I know it's a giant question, but what was that
Yeah.
time period like? If you can go back that far, that's what,
It's-
2006, like 2000, way back
yeah,
in the day.
it's a little ways to go back, but yeah, I was very involved in extracurriculars in high school. I was very involved in band in many forms. I was in the jazz band, the marching band,
What'd you play?
the well, let's see, in concert band and in marching band, I play percussion,
Hmm.
and jazz band, I played the vibraphone, and then I
Wow.
also played in the orchestra, upright bass.
Oh, wow. Just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. Music was kind of my life growing up. And I was involved also with what we started a first robotics team when
Oh,
I was in high school. That was just kind of coming onto the scene back then. Now it's a lot more
yeah.
prevalent. And the team that I helped start still exists and
Wow.
has won quite a few trips to the national championships.
Do
So
you remember
that's
the
kind of
team
cool.
number?
1671.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I was involved with that my junior and senior year. I also was on the math team my junior and senior year, um, and was very driven academically. I did graduate valedictorian,
Wow.
and I got interested in USC my junior year when I kind of made a pivot from wanting to study music in college to something. The words that were used were more practical.
Words
uh,
used by whom?
my guidance counselor. I
Vibraphone jobs being what they were in 2006.
yeah, I had dreams of going to the Berklee School of Music
Hmm.
up until that point, and several things happened that kind of helped change my trajectory. But my guidance counselor, knowing me, said, Marcelle, you really value structure and stability. Being a musician might not give you that. Being an engineer might, and you have a lot of potential.
So you took
And
it literally and went straight to structural.
Yes, I did. I am like that. So my grandpa was a civil engineer, and that's kind of probably how I ended up in that realm. As a kid, he would take us to visit dams that he had participated
Hmm.
in the construction of.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Like civil
so
conservation corps, like CCC stuff back in the day.
no, he was just a heavy civil engineer.
Okay.
He was a dam builder, and yeah, that's had the dam hat and the dam this. Yeah, that was my grandpa, and so I think that kind of steered me a little bit. I think my freshman year at USC, I took a course that was maybe like an intro to all types of
Oh
engineering.
yeah, the undeclared engineering stuff back in the day. We don't
Yeah,
do that anymore, but
okay.
yeah.
I think I may have taken that kind of with a leaning towards civil, and then that kind of pushed me that way.
Yeah. Short version for anyone that's listening and just for your update. That was an old school way of things we used to do because what we found out is what you just validated is that anybody who took that class or self-identified as undeclared engineering had something in their back pocket that they were thinking about. And then when they went through that class, they're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so we're like, why are we doing this? And then there were like not complaints, but the critiques of the class were, or the critiques of the experience were, I love the week I did on civil, and I don't understand why I didn't get that for a whole semester. I wish I did. And then you know,
Mm,
instead of that, you could have gotten through the intro class of civil and been fine. So,
right.
anyways,
Yeah.
that's what we discovered, and we nixed that a while ago.
Interesting. Makes sense.
So the idea of robotics though didn't get you to not that it's supposed to, and I love this, and I want to make sure that people hear this because I think some people in high school specifically see robotics and they think, oh, I got to do, I'm the programmer, so I got to do computer science. I'm the mechanics lead, I got to do mechanical engineering. I'm circuitry or power, and I got to do electrical engineering. They kind of see just those things, but it's much more just like the mindset of problem solving and resiliency, correct?
Yes, 100%. And learning how to take a problem and solve it quickly, right? Because it's a short season. You're given 6 weeks to come up. Well, and maybe it's changed, but
No, that's
at the
relatively
time
right. It's relatively
it
right.
was six weeks to solve a problem that you had no information about prior to that, other than you knew you were going to have to build some sort of robot. So I think in that experience, it was learning that quick problem solving skill.
Mhm.
Was what was critical, not necessarily that it was very mechanical or
Mhm.
electrical. And those things themselves actually really didn't appeal to me as much. I always kind of had an interest in architecture as a little kid. Like I
Mhm.
loved like drawing floor plans.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I think the civil engineer thing combined with the influence in the family it just kind of naturally made more sense to me.
Yeah.
But I knew that I could kind of hack it at engineering after that experience.
That's great. Can I tell you a funny story? So,
Sure.
my daughter just started robotics
Oh, cool.
and she's in elementary school. So, this is her first year of first
Okay.
Lego League. And so, we just
Yeah.
went through our first season of Lego League robotics. And it's fascinating to be on the other side of this and to watch this. Because I've long heard and seen the stories of students coming out of high school, but to see it in the impetus form, it's just kind of like it's really, really interesting. It's also, as a parent, incredibly frustrating because it's very unorganized. But other than that, the kids love the experience and they love kind of you can already see the wheels spinning and the problem solving and the like, oh, that was how it's supposed to work, but it didn't work that way. And oh, we can make decisions about where we're going to put our resources, even though they don't articulate it that way. They have these really interesting kind of viewpoints and dynamics that they're actually looking at.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I with the Lego League thing wasn't as prevalent in
No.
my district
Mm.
when I was in school, but I remember coming back and visiting with the school, the teacher who was in charge of the program,
Mhm.
and learning about it as they brought a Lego League team into the district, and then
Yeah.
the high school kids would help mentor, and it's kind of cool to
Yeah.
see the
Yeah.
evolution of it.
Yeah, definitely. What was the coming from Clovis for people who don't know where Clovis is? It's rather it's like is it rural? Is it considered rural or is it just more just like suburban in the middle of the state?
Yeah, it's more suburban. I mean, maybe
Okay.
30, 40 years ago, it was pretty rural, but
So you call me
now
old. Got it. I got it. Okay, got
I mean, I'm in that category too.
it. No, it's definitely grown, but people don't know where
It's,
Clovis is. It's not.
yeah.
This is
So,
that thing of like, oh, you live in California, and it's like, well, there's like four Californias. Which California do you live in? You know, it's very specific.
right. Yeah. So it's Central California. I always tell people if you're looking at a map of California and you go like north, south to the
Hmm.
middle and you go east, west to the middle, you'll find
Dead center.
Fresno.
Dead
Yeah.
center. Very cool.
Yeah.
What was
It's
it
like right
like?
on the line.
What was it like to come from a place such as Clovis to Los Angeles, which is very, very different? What was that
Yeah.
cultural shift like? What were you expecting versus what you found? How has it changed you overall, if it has?
there, it's Brooke, one of your Viterbi admission counselors with your mid-podcast message. I want to tell you about our year-round on-campus Visit Viterbi experiences. They're the best way to get to know more about our Viterbi programs. It's a 90-minute session focused on first-year applicants, and it includes an overview of our academic programs and admission process. It's led by one of our very own USC Viterbi admission counselors. So if you'd like to join us on campus, we would love to meet you. Please visit viterbi.link/events. That's VITERBI.link/events to reserve your Visit Viterbi experience. Now back to the podcast.
It was definitely a culture shock for me. Even as someone who had traveled a lot growing up, it was still a culture shock to go from a predominantly white, middle-class, suburban community to LA.
Everything else.
Everything.
Everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So it took a little adjusting. And then, of course, being at USC, it's kind of its own little microcosm. And I wasn't, I lived on campus, so it wasn't like I was really exploring a lot of Los Angeles, especially in the first couple of years. But it took some adjusting. There were definitely some shifts and like eye-opening experiences that I had.
Yeah.
To be frank, I had my first encounter with someone who was openly gay in college that I'd never run into that
before. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was very eye-opening to me in that way. And a good experience to grow up in, to kind of get out of a very sheltered community into what felt more like equivalent to the real world.
That's my favorite part about college, is that I think everybody has those stories of first encountering something that you've maybe only heard about. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And then you start realizing that the life that you led, regardless of where it was sheltered in and of its own self, just because of like, it was very curated, wherever that ended up being. Unless you are living in a city, which is where you end up seeing a lot of those things. Because most people, or at least to your point, 30, 40 years ago, weren't living in cities so much. And now that's changing because the urbanization of the country. And we're seeing a lot more of that diversification, a lot more of that coming together of different cultures. I remember when I tell the story a lot when I went to college, and everybody makes fun of me, and I make fun of myself for this. It was the first time on Ash Wednesday that I ever saw ashes on someone's forehead.
Yeah.
And it's just because where I grew up, there weren't a lot of Catholics, or if they did that, they did that after school and went home. It wasn't like, and then so walking around campus all day on Ash Wednesday, where you have ashes going everywhere. I'm like, what is happening? Do you know you got something on your head? Like, and then I just, I didn't know. And then all of a sudden it started coming to me. And also I recognized that friends of mine had experiences like that at their colleges, whether that would be with an LGBTQ community or anything else, and talking to them over break or over the phone or anything else was fascinating to me, at least in my experience, that my community, when I was at USC, was far more accepting of these things than a lot of other places. And I won't name names, but I have a very specific person from my past who went to a very specific college and was speaking ill about an LGBTQ event. And then like, oh, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, these are people that I've met. They're friends of mine. They're celebrating. They're having a great time. It was either coming out week or something like that. And it's just fascinating. It's one of my favorite things about USC. People don't recognize how many different worlds come together at USC. And I think that there's it's an understated message that I think is something to talk about.
I agree.
When you come to campus and you're here, you're kind of bright-eyed in the big city, and you're discovering your interest in engineering. You don't give up your interest in music or the arts. I think you maintained your involvement, right? In at least theater, if I remember correctly, and maybe music.
Music. I didn't get involved with theater. I was in high school.
Okay.
But yeah,
I thought you worked in the theater. Like, did you have like?
I worked at Bovard.
Oh,
yes.
God. Yeah, okay. Because I remember you walking around in all black a lot. I'm like, are you sad? You're like, no, I'm in a theater production.
Yeah, no, that was my first work study job. Was I worked the backstage technical crew at Bovard,
Oh, cool. See, you
and I
kept
did
it in
that
your, you
for a
kept
couple
it
of
in your
years.
world is my
Yeah,
point. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, 100%.
And
And I
music as well.
also, yeah, I played in the community orchestra my freshman year, played upright bass, and then I think my sophomore year I sang in the women's chorale.
That's awesome. I remember
Yeah,
music being a big part of your life. And so that's,
yeah,
see, that's another thing that people think too, is that there's a lot of people that come out of high school that just describing your exact scenario, which is I'm really good at these things, but I really love X, music, theater, the arts. And this identity, it feels like an identity crisis coming out of high school. Did it feel like that to you?
yes,
And you felt like you're being forced into something and you're like, no, but my identity is this other thing. And what more often than not, you are not this lone story that people get here and realize I can still do all these things and
right,
maintain this interest and involvement. I mean, even no one's gonna see this video, but you're sitting there with a piano in the actual frame, like you've got music in your
right.
life all the time, right? It's been a big part of your life.
Right. Yes. Yes, it has. I've gone on after college, and I sang for many years in an a cappella group, and
Awesome.
loved that. And I do still try and play the piano, and I'm learning to play the ukulele.
Are you really?
Yeah.
What's different about the ukulele that other instruments don't have?
Well, it's very portable, so
Mm.
that's great.
Other
I
than an upright
actually,
bass. Do
yeah, it's
you,
much cheaper to own, takes up a lot less space.
do you ever see that old? I think it's I forget. It's an old Woody Allen movie, but it's a throwaway joke, and he's talking about his time in high school and how he played the upright bass in the marching band. And then they cut to like a parade, and there's Woody Allen attempting to like run with the upright bass. He has to sit down and start playing it, and then the band starts collapsing around him and moving forward, and he has to pick it up and run again. It's one of the best things.
They actually make, I've never seen that, but now I want to go watch it. They
Yeah.
actually make a wheel that you can put on the bottom
Oh
of
yeah.
the upright bass so that you can roll it.
Roll it.
Not meant to
Not
be
for not
for
for like
marching
a
band.
parade.
No, but just to transport it. Because when I played at USC, I didn't own my own upright. And
Yeah.
so I rented one and I kept it in my dorm room, and I had to
Wow.
roll it to rehearsal
Wow.
and whatnot. Yeah.
When you arrive there and you're doing these things, and I go back to identity. We talk a lot about in this podcast about students' identities and perception of identities and what they believe their identity is when they got there versus what it ended up being. And we have the convenience of hindsight, and we can look back and remember
Yes.
things. And what was key to your current identity? Was there anything key to your current identity of experiences that you had at USC? Was there something you're like, oh, that made me realize I was gonna do this, or that even if it wasn't like linear, it's just you look back, you're like, oh, that was the first time I did that, or was it just kind of all part of one process?
Wow, that's a
It's
huge
a tough question. Sorry, dropping handles on you.
Yeah. So I think at that period in my life, I wasn't 100% sure what my identity was.
Yeah.
I think I was very much one of those kids, students who kind of took on what people expected of me because I showed, some strengths here and there. And I think I was definitely one of those people who, dad says to be like this, so I'll be like that. And, calculus teacher says this, and, you just kind of take that on. And I don't think it was until much after college where I really started to unpack a lot of that and get into, yeah, but who am I really? Like without all of those influences.
Rather than trying to please someone else.
Right.
Or meet a
just
standard.
meet expectations
Yeah.
and standards. Yeah. But I think like you say, kind of with hindsight, looking back, I can see certain things that I did and chose to do that were for me. They weren't for somebody else. I think looking back, studying engineering was probably a lot for someone else. Smart choice.
Yeah.
I don't regret it one bit. It has
Right.
opened doors for me continually. But I think if I had known what was true in my heart, that's not what I would have done. Staying involved with music was definitely more for me. I wasn't, I didn't get any benefit in my degree for doing that. I just knew that was something I loved and would help me feel good inside. I also have always been a swimmer and never competed like in high school. Like I wasn't, because it conflicted with being in band, but I played water polo in junior high, and I ended up joining the club team at USC for a year and playing. And that was, again, looking back, swimming is now a huge part of my life. And that was me trying to find that within the realm of everything else I was trying to do, I think, at that time, trying to connect those pieces. And then I think a lot of the leadership roles that I took on in extracurriculars at USC, I think actually, I never thought this at the time, but a friend actually recently said this to me. She's like, yeah, I know you've always been the leader. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's not until the experience that I'm having now that I'm really seeing it full circle, that is just, without even trying, people just kind of seem to look up to me and follow my lead. And so I'm seeing now, like, there were times in college that I stepped into those roles without really like thinking about it as, oh, I need to be a leader. Just kind of fell into my lap, so to speak. And looking back, I can see how that was part of my identity forming.
It's interesting. You talked about this idea of meeting a standard or meeting expectations, and I use the word eager to please. And it's funny how I can kind of see you. I'll do that because I guess something that has to get done, and I'll do it. But then over time, people realize, like, well, we can always rely on Marcelle. She'll be the one that will take us through these things. And it's that idea of sometimes reluctant leadership, like, oh, okay, whatever, I guess I'll get out there and do it. But it's interesting that you never saw yourself that way, but you're beginning to see yourself now that way, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I'd been in leadership roles, most of my life. I mean, even as a kid. And I just don't think I ever saw myself that way. I think it was just like, to me in my mind more correlated with, well, if I'm the best in the group at it, then I'm the one who's going to lead. And that's very common in music, right? You're a section leader if you're first chair. And how do you become first chair? By being the best in the audition. And so in band and in music, that was very much because I was always the best, I would be the section leader. And so I'd have those kind of experiences and never really equated it to that I'm a natural leader. It was just because I'm good at it.
Where did you try to do something where you realized that you weren't the best and it was frustrating for you? You're like, nothing. I'm excellent at everything. I am amazing.
Lots of
you
things.
Don't even know.
I mean, I am a recovering perfectionist, so it is hard for me to be a beginner at things, but I've learned that it's important to be a beginner. I've been learning to fly fish over the last 10 plus years.
How did that happen?
My aunt and uncle live in the fly fishing mecca of the United States, and I started visiting them. It's up in where Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming kind of meet near Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah.
So the Henry's Fork River and the Madison River both run through there. They're both blue ribbon trout streams.
Wow.
And my uncle's been in fly fishing his whole life. And so I'd go up and visit, and they'd, teach me and take me out. And after doing that for maybe 6 or 7 years, I met a guy who was a fly fishing guide. And he is, now we've been together for almost 6 years.
Wow.
So I've, kind of had to learn. But I learned what a not good fly fisherman I was.
I have heard that it is really good for people like the way you described yourself as like seeking perfection, because it's this meditative process of like you don't control anything. You just kind of like do something, and the whole point is to like experience it. And sometimes you get something and sometimes you don't. And to me, like the thought of that drives me insane. like I'm an inherent, we have a lot of similarities, but like the thing I'll add to it is like I'm an inherently competitive person. And I'm like, why are we not here except to catch 10 fish. Like I need to catch 10. Like how many did you catch last time? Okay, we're gonna do +1. Like that's what we got to do. Like that's winning. Like so
Yeah.
I feel like it's
Doesn't work
probably
in fishing.
right. I feel like it's probably what I need, but I know I don't want to. So those are the things that I've heard a lot about this idea of fly fishing as a meditative process, and people like, not experience, but they almost seek Zen, if that makes any sense out of that. Is that what you found?
Oh, it's very true. I have yet to find true Zen with it because I still struggle with my capabilities, but it's meditative in the sense that there's so much about it that you can't control. You can't control the weather, you can't control the water conditions, you can't control the fish. All you can control is the fly that you put on and your cast and your presentation.
And your reactions to whatever is happening.
And your reactions, yes. Yeah. So it's a frustrating thing for me. I don't love it, but it has been a good kind of metaphor for me in life to embrace it and to embrace all of the things that you can't control and what can I control, and learning to just kind of be one with nature and embrace being a beginner and like be okay with that and not have to be the best at it. Cause like, I'll never be as good as my boyfriend. He's been doing it his whole life. He's a professional. And there was a time where it was like, I would strive to be that good. And it was so incredibly frustrating. And when I finally just said, I'm never going to be that good and I don't need to be that good. I can just do it because it's fun and it's something we can do together. It's like it became more fun that way because I was able to let go. So it's been a good tool for me for recovering from that perfectionistic tendency. Very humbling.
It's really good. No, and it's good advice for anyone listening, because I think that's the other thing that's inherent among students that tend to look at engineering is this idea of control. And one of the things that whether it was, nature, nurture, the idea of why someone got into engineering, it's usually the control of the quantitative and the ability to understand it and the ability to create solutions when no one else can. And the interesting part is like all those skill sets lead you into engineering, realizing that when you're in it, when you're an actual engineer, that is what makes you a bad engineer. Like your flexibility in the future and your ability to understand gray area and application and synthesis of quantitative reasoning towards human beings is a much different process than like the math that got you here, if that makes any sense, which is a struggle that people have in becoming, successful engineers. Yes. Yeah. So this is also funny because I think of you a lot, actually, because one of your experiences, I don't know, you haven't brought it up, so I was trying to like tease it out of you earlier, but I'm just going to force you to bring it up. One of your experiences while you're at USC is you studied abroad. Yes. And it is a very particular thing in my memory because it was the first time I ever traveled internationally, and I was a semi-quote advisor on that trip. And
wow, so I had no idea.
I faked it really good.
Yeah, you did.
So you stand out in my mind because that was my first trip. I think it was 2008, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Summer 2008 in Rome. Cut to, I've been there now like 15 times. I know that whole staff backwards and forwards. I don't need a map. And I've been to Rome, Florence, Madrid, London, Paris, and a bunch of other places. And I've taken upwards of 60 students to places, and we've lost people and we found people and we've kicked people out and we've done all sorts of things since then. But I remember that was a very first trip. And so that just sticks out in my head. And the reason I'm getting back to you, sorry, I'm telling my own story, I don't need to talk about me, is I talk a lot about overseas programs as this idea of learning flexibility and this idea of like expectations for how it's going to go versus the reality of how it's going to go. And the idea of, this is the place where everything's going to be amazing. And it just isn't. Like there's still struggles. There's still stressors. There's still things that come into your life and you need to kind of adjust to things as you go. And I always talk about how everybody, and we had a chat like when you were there, which is funny. That was my first day. I was so jet lagged. And we had a chat that you were having a hard home. And like, hopefully I'm not talking to school about this, but like you were having a hard time. I was like, yeah, we just got to figure out how to figure this stuff out, and we'll figure out, and then at the end of the program, people become different people. And I've seen college students quite literally become adults on that program because they have like a certain view of life when they come into it and then another view of life when they come out of it. And I don't know if I'm saying a lot, saying like, what's your memory of that? And am I on point when I explain that to other people, or what are other things you remember about that program?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm really glad you guys are still doing it because I think that is an
We're not.
incredible. Oh,
We're doing different things now. There's many overseas programs, but
okay. Well, that's good.
that version doesn't happen anymore. But there's many
Okay.
others. The good news is that we changed programs so more students had more opportunities because that was like 30 to 40
it was very
per
limited.
year. Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
limited. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. That was a really interesting summer for me in so many ways. And it's kind of funny in hindsight because I definitely remember having that conversation with you to know where you were. Because you did a good job. Because whatever we chatted about, whatever it was, it helped me, I think, through that hump.
Okay.
And I think for me, with those expectations, like you kind of talked about, I'd traveled to Europe before. It was not my first time. And so I think I kind of thought, oh, this won't be stressful for me in that sense.
Yeah.
And, of course, totally different circumstances. And it was challenging for me. I think I was a little bit homesick.
Yeah.
But also I think this is really going back far, but I think if I recall correctly, there was some aspect of wanting it to be this amazing thing and feeling kind of like that it wasn't living up to that because the day-to-day wasn't all just rosy,
It was a vacation.
Yeah, it wasn't a vacation. It wasn't just like a fun trip with your friends. It was school.
Yeah.
And it was school, and you were living with people who you weren't used to living with, and then the language barrier, and it was a lot. But it was also an incredible experience, like you said, like a growing up experience, because you had to kind of overcome some of these things and learn to manage those expectations to bring them back down to reality, I think.
Yeah. So I bring all this up because I think of you a lot when I talk about this. And when we had that chat, it actually formulated in my head a way to, because we used to do like orientations. We used to like advise, we'd do like not trainings, but like these are classes you got to go to before you go to the trip. And since our talk and what we ended up talking about and the challenges that you were expressing to me, because I don't think you're alone in that. I just think you're the only one that ever explained it to me like that, or explained it to anyone else, that you're very clear with me as far as how you were feeling. And it clicked for me on how I did it. So the next year, for 12 years after that, I had a very specific section in orientation, and no one knew it was talking about you, but it was about this experience is not vacation. Some of you have a model for what you think Europe is, or what like traveling abroad is, and it's not that. And let me tell you why. And there's these stressors that come into play with academics and everything else. And then there's another level to this, which is, do you remember all the stresses that you weren't expecting moving into your dorm freshman year? All these people, these things you thought you'd be friends with, the things you ended up you're not being friends with, the little ups and downs, and the little like, we're best friends, now we're enemies, or like we're best friends again. Like all those things that ended up happening, all the emotions. I said, what ends up happening on this overseas program is that you all think certain things are going to go a certain way, and then we compress everything into like 6 weeks. And so you go through all of those highs and all of those lows in a rapid fashion. And so like the classes are amped up, the emotions are amped up, the compression of like more students you don't know being all together, and an expectation that you're all going to have a great time. So the first thing is don't expect to have a great time. Like it will happen over time, but don't have that expectation. Expect to do a lot of work, expect to work on relationships, expect to experience cultures where you're stressed and you're pulled in different directions that you weren't expecting to do. And over time, if you're ready for that, if you're malleable to that, you end up having this really cool experience, but the cool experience only comes by being pulled and stretched in those different environments. And so I have to thank you, because from that, I ended up reshaping everything we ever did and how we talked about that program. And it's been a really big game changer for me. So thank you.
Wow. My pleasure. It's interesting to know that, because I think a lot of times, especially mental health stuff, it's still not talked about.
No, it's not.
And I think it's important for people to know that those conversations are impactful, not just for yourself, but for other people.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, how many, because you changed your orientation for that program, how many other students went into it with a better idea of what to expect?
I can only hope, right? I mean, I guess my main point is that to anyone that's listening, if there's a larger lesson here, it's the idea of, you know, when you feel a certain way, it's highly likely you're not the only one. And the more that you talk about it and you talk about it with someone and more people, then the idea of wellness can become a shared experience. And it's not a single journey that you're hoping to achieve, thinking that everybody else is ahead of you, like some sort of race. Because that's what most people view most of life like, oh, it's I'm not that, I'm not that. I don't know where I am. And it's this idea where everybody's just not talking. And, you know, you don't know how many people on that exact same trip were having struggles, just not talking about it and dealing with it in different ways. And over the years, I dealt with a few different ones, but it was, you know, that our conversation was monumental. And also because it was my very first day.
When the student becomes the teacher, right?
Oh my God. It was such that trip had so many different elements because it was my first time. But I remember that day, like I was jet lagged. I remember right before that, I was locked in the apartment that I slept in. And I had
There's
to figure
nothing
out,
like a good international trip to like really give you some great stories.
My very first trip, I like end up in an apartment. I'm told to sleep in this room. I wake up and the faculty that I was with, they ended up leaving and they ended up locking the door from the outside. And I don't have a way out. And I'm trying to figure out how to work. This is 2008, so I'm trying to figure out how to work my phone. Like, how can I call somebody? I don't know. It's just like, I'm looking out the window thinking, can I Jason Bourne this thing? Can I like get to that patio to like jump down? I don't really know where I am in Rome. Like it's just this whole, like, it's a weird thing, but you know,
that's really funny.
Cut to now it was like, because I stopped working on those programs. It's a whole other story, but I stopped working on those programs around 2020 was my last one. But 2019, my wife and I went and we brought our daughter to that program, and we ended up doing the whole time. We had to talk about the idea of putting someone through an experience that they're not ready for. We put how old was she? No, that wasn't 2019. That was 2018. She was 3 years old. And at 3, she was on that program. So if you remember we got on a bus and we like went to a different city and like with the whole day and like all those different elements. And the cool part was that the students that were on that trip started like babysitting, like they started like taking over. And then she just thought she was with all of her friends at 3 years old. And so like we're walking down that main street by the Coliseum and we're doing all the tours and everything else. And she's just her hands being held. She's being carried. She's being walked around the Roman Forum. Like she's got everything with all the students and everything else, and went on that whole thing like 6 weeks in Italy. And so now we realize she was too young. She doesn't really remember any of it, but it was a good time. Have you been back to Italy at all since that point?
I have been back to Italy. I went back in 2022. I went with a friend who was competing in a triathlon in Sardinia.
Oh.
And she's my swimming buddy, so I went with her just for fun. She has family north of Milan, and that was where she was born. And so we went and stayed with her family for a few days, and then went to Sardinia together.
Have you ever been back to Rome since then?
I have not.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
I mean, I would go, but I feel like I saw it, you know, like. Oh, really? I mean, yeah, I don't know that there's nothing there that I'm like, oh, I never went and did this. I want to go back and do this. Like, I feel like that was the really cool thing about that program was I saw Italy, right? I don't need to go back to Italy because I'm like, I saw pretty much all of it. I mean, not all of it, but I mean, I saw so much of it. And to me, there's so much more of the world to go see that it's like, okay, well, I've seen a lot of Italy, so I'd rather go to other countries. And
what's still on your list of a place you really want to go to?
It's a really long list.
First thing comes to mind.
First thing, Antarctica.
Wow. Where no one else
Yeah.
is.
I mean, yeah, I have a little bit of that explorer adventure in me, and I really
Gotcha.
enjoy going places that are a little more off the beaten path. Not
Yeah.
that Antarctica has become kind of a destination for people.
Sure.
But I just think it would be cool. Just something very different, something different than I've ever seen.
That's awesome. So speaking of that explorer idea, you graduate from USC and you go to the Navy. Tell me about that
Yes.
experience. How was that decision made, and what was your life like in the Navy? Were you, what were you doing? Where did you go? Tell me everything.
Okay, so I actually joined the Navy while I was still in college,
Mm.
which you probably remember a little bit of.
Yeah.
I
Was it
still
ROTC?
have
Was it ROTC, or just
No,
you just joined the Navy?
I did a what they called a baccalaureate degree completion program,
Oh.
and it went away for a long time. They were using it as a recruiting tool to recruit officers. I heard they recently brought it back. I'm not sure
I don't know.
if that's entirely true, but I was at a job fair in a Viterbi job fair,
Mm.
and it was I think it was already sophomore year. And I already kind of knew I wanted to go into construction management side of
Hmm.
things in the civil engineering field. And I was dating a guy in the Navy, ROTC program. And I actually had my high school boyfriend from Buchanan went to USC as well. We stayed friends. He was also in the Navy ROTC program. So I was around a lot of that Navy type people.
Hmm.
And it was interesting to me, but I kind of was like, I don't really want to be a pilot or serve on a ship, or, it wasn't like there was nothing that was really drawing me to it. But I was drawn to the idea of it. My dad served in the Air Force. My older brother served in the Air Force. So it wasn't like a foreign concept to me.
Sure.
And when I saw the Navy at the career fair, I just thought, well, let's just go up and see what they're doing here. What do they have to offer, right?
Yeah.
And of course, at that time, this would have been back in 2000, I think it was early 2008. They were heavily recruiting to try and find females who would be the first nuclear engineers on the nuclear submarines. And I was like, nah, I don't really want to do that.
Okay.
Like, yeah, that's not for me. What else you got?
Okay.
And they're like, well, what are you studying? I said, civil engineering. And I said, oh, okay, well, we do have this other program. It's really small, but maybe it's interesting to you. And it was for the Civil Engineer Corps. And so I decided, oh yeah, that sounds more like something I'd be interested in. Tell me more about it. Give me some stuff to read. And, thought it over for a while and realized that was my opportunity to serve my country in a way that was meaningful and interesting to me. And so eventually I went through the recruitment process and I enlisted while I think it didn't happen until my junior year. And so I signed a contract. I was sworn in. Wow. And at that point on, I was an enlisted person in the military, but my only job was really just to go to school and finish school. I had to do the physical fitness tests twice a year, but that was it. And so, my contract was you finish school with a degree in civil engineering, you go to officer candidate school, you earn your commission, and then you become a civil engineer corps officer in the United States Navy. So that's what I did. So after I graduated 2 weeks later, I was in Newport, Rhode Island, and went through officer candidate school. I graduated that August, or I commissioned that August, and went to the Civil Engineer Corps Officer School from there. And it's not quite what I had in mind, but from there, pretty much everything went downhill really fast.
Oh, no.
Yeah. My health totally fell apart.
Oh.
I was a wreck. I don't know if you recall, I was a chronic migraine sufferer. And I was just in so much pain 24/7. It was driving me crazy. Wow. And eventually I actually, I was seeing a psychologist and I requested that I be admitted to a psychiatric hospital because I was terrified for my life. I was in a really, really deep, dark place. And that was a time where I didn't really talk to people about it. And it turned out a lot of people that went through OCS with me were feeling a lot of the same things, maybe not all the same pain, but mentally they were all in the same space as me, and I never reached out to them. And so I felt very alone. So my career in the Navy ended up being very short. I served for about 3 years, and I ended up getting out very early because I was considered unfit for duty because of health. But in the time that I was there, I was stationed at Port Hueneme, so up in Ventura County. And in the time that I was there, I was able to do my part, and I felt like I was able to, I wasn't just hanging out. They put me to work, but I didn't end up doing what I had hoped I would do. And so that was kind of disappointing for me. It was definitely the first time in my life I ever felt like I failed at something. And that was really, really hard to grapple with. To have come from so many years of always succeeding, always being in the top percentage,
always meeting those expectations,
always meeting those expectations. Yep.
Kind of sounds like that's why you got in the Navy too, by the way, listening to your story, just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely,
like, everyone else here in my life is doing it. So therefore I needed to.
There's definitely a lot of that, but I have always felt a sense of duty.
I get it. Yeah.
I think that was there. I think there were probably better ways for me to have fulfilled that in ways that didn't need to compromise my health.
Right.
But my body pretty much just fell apart. And after I got out, I spent I'm still working on it, but I definitely spent the next several years with my entire focus being on my health and went from traditional Western medicine, regular doctors, to the totally opposite side of the spectrum, to everything that one might consider alternative or woo-woo or all of that. And it made all of the difference. And that experience of failing, hitting bottom, failing, that's what I call it. I mean, I didn't really fail, but, kind of having this rock bottom experience and then learning that, okay, I can either spend the rest of my life being sick and ill and on medications, or I can figure out a way to turn this around. And I went off the deep end. I studied, I read, I seeked out practitioners, and my health in the last 10 years is like just a mirror opposite of everything it was ever before. It's still a work in progress. There's a lot of undoing to be done.
Sure.
But I definitely, I never imagined I could be this healthy as a kid, which is crazy.
Metaphorically, it sounds as though whatever that experience was this like shattering of what we talked about leading up to this, which is like, I'm in this I'm in this pattern of skill sets meeting expectations, but you never felt like you were driving, if that makes sense. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's what was going on. And then finally you found yourself in the ultimate, in the military, you are not driving.
Right. No.
You are following orders. And so that is expectations, meeting expectations, and that environment of pressure. And also going through college does that too. Like there's a lot that goes into college people don't talk about when it comes to wellness, and the structure and the process and the cranking it out and feeling like you're never doing enough. And then the leap to a profession, and people make decisions. I'm one of those that makes the decision because like, I don't know, so I'll do this. And you just kind of like find your way through stuff, and everyone thinks that everyone else has it figured out. But it sure sounds like that became this really great epiphany and rebirth for you to kind of come into, who you're going to be, somewhat Phoenician, this idea of like, let's burn everything down and let's start fresh. And it sounds like that's what happened. Like, at least that's what your body was telling you. We are breaking all of this down, and we need to metaphorically rise from the ashes.
Yeah, no, that is, I mean, it didn't seem like that at the time.
Of course
but
not.
In hindsight.
No. It sounds like your world's ending when you're in it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. When you're 22 years old and you're like, wow, I just failed at my first career. It was a lot. But yeah, I think at the time I called it my quarter life crisis.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. It was my body and my mind saying, you have pushed so hard for so long and we're done. Like, you're going to just have to stop one way or the other and rethink this whole thing of how you live your life. And that is what it did for me. And it is the most magical, transformative experience I've ever had. But it happened because I felt like I was at the bottom, and I knew, I know I'm better than this. I know I don't have to stay here. What do I have to do? I mean, I had to put in real work to decide that I was going to be something different. Because I could have just been like, okay, well, this is the hand I've been dealt, and I'll just go along.
Yeah.
But, that's never been me. The driver is within me and always has been. I was just always going towards the wrong destination. It was a destination other people were picking for me.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that story, because I think that, while everybody may say like, oh, that's not the life that I'm going to have, I think that I honestly believe that everybody has that experience in their 20s. And there's various levels of severity, and there's various like contexts that people go through. And a lot of it has to do with this idea of expectations. I've got it all figured out at this point. Oh, wait, I don't understand what's happening, and we do a lot of counseling with people where we talk about, you leave high school thinking you got to figure it out. Then you come to college and realize you don't know anything. And then you go through college and you think you got to figure it out. So then you go into your profession and you're like, I don't have it figured out. And then what you don't realize is that what you've been training for is this cycle of starting over. Like, here we go. And I make jokes about this sometimes, which is like, every time you start over, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. Like, know your place on the totem pole when you get here, and like move to the next totem pole. You need to know your place in the totem pole. Like, where are you? You don't rule this place yet. Let's just keep rising up. And so I give these talks to people based on like wherever they are. Cause some people have a different perspective. Like, I have nailed this. I am amazing. Right. Like, you've met those people, right? You met those people that come in and say, oh no, I am God's gift to this place, and I'm going to show you what's happening. And it's like, oh, slow your roll, man. Like, let's come down to this way. So people go through different versions of this a lot. So
yeah. And it never ends.
No,
like, I think you go through that your whole life.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, like, you do that with relationships. You do that like with your relationship that you're in now. And then if this ends up, I don't want to put, I'm not throwing it out there, but if it goes to the idea of a marriage, then that starts all over again. If that goes to the idea of kids, that starts all over again. Right. A second kid, that starts all over. It's like every time you think you got it figured out, something comes and it's like leveling. I tell people now when I do with students a lot, I said, it's like video games. You're leveling up. And every level is hard until you figure it out. And then you're like, nailed it. Next one. You're like, oh shit, I can't do this. I don't know what it is. And it's just the idea of iteration. There's actually a book on this. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it takes the idea of gamification in video games in a young adult society. And if actually success or the process of growing up was actually taught through that gaming lens, then we would actually have far more wellness would be a bigger part of our life, because you're taught that failure is how you learn in a game.
Right.
You go through and you get killed by the boss. And you're like, oh, I gotta try a different way. And it's this trial and trial and trial. But most of our culture is not that way. It's like, you're good at something, you're bad at something. And this is a lot we've been talking about in this conversation, about this idea of I do the things I was good at. And then the fly fishing, I mean, we're coming really all around in this conversation. This is all making a lot of sense. And I'm loving how this is circling back on itself quite well. It's a really cool life lesson. So you start a company after this? Is this where this whole, you're a business owner now? What is this company?
Yes.
Yeah. What's going on after that?
So after I got out of the Navy,
Rise of the Phoenix after this.
Rise of the Phoenix. Yeah. I spent a couple years kind of just trying to reevaluate, where am I going from here? I mean, I say a couple years, I think it was like a year and a half or two.
Sure.
It felt like longer. But I basically decided at that point, civil engineering wasn't for me. I was watching friends of mine who I, went through USC with, working their tails off. And I thought, yeah, I can do that. But my body has basically been telling me, no.
The traditional work as a civil engineer is not in that world,
Yeah.
construction management.
And especially construction management, and especially being a female in that world. Now, it's maybe changed in the last 15 years, but at that time, there weren't a lot of jobs opening. It was the tail end of the recession. So construction was just now starting to really feel it. I interviewed for one job. I was one of, I think, 5 or 6 applicants, didn't get it, and kind of, was disheartened. And then spent some time kind of soul searching, like, is this really what I want to do? Or am I just doing this because I think that that's what I'm supposed to do? And it was definitely the latter. And so I took some time, and like I said, I focused on my health, and eventually I made a move back to Fresno. And at that time, my mom was kind of in a career transition as well. And a colleague of hers, so both my parents worked in agriculture for their whole careers. And so they had lots of colleagues in that industry. And a colleague of hers reached out and asked if she would be interested in this business of his that he'd had on the side, and that he would train her and she could take over his clients because he was starting to work towards retirement. And, he kind of explained it to her, and she thought, yeah, okay, maybe can my daughter do it too? And he said, sure. So she asked me, she said, there's this, it's not even a job, like this opportunity to learn this trade essentially. And, we'd have our own business doing it. If it's flexible hours, we can work from home. Does that sound interesting to you? And I'm like, yeah, because what I've been doing is not enough. Right. So I said, sure, let's try it out. And so he trained us, and we started our own business from his clients, and it's grown from there. And I'll tell you now what it is that we do.
And you've been teasing this whole time. It's a business. We make lots of business decisions, lots of business things. We spend our day doing business.
The very beginning, we were not
lots of transactions
savvy at all.
I was wondering, I'm like, did I miss what we're talking about? Or like, you haven't said what you like. I just do lots of business. You're like a mob boss in a movie.
It's exactly what it is.
We took over the family business. I'm in the import-export business.
So my mom's background is in plant science, and this was learning how to do consulting for fertilizer regulations.
Oh, cool.
So in the world of fertilizer, everything is state regulated. There's no federal rules like in pesticides where you have the EPA. So everything is state regulated, and with 50 different states, you have 50 different sets of regulations. They're not the same across the board. And so companies that manufacture and distribute fertilizer, soil amendments, surfactants, anything that's beneficial to plant health, if they want to sell into all 50 states, they have to come up with a fertilizer label that is compliant in all 50 states.
Wow.
They have to be licensed as a company. They have to register their products, and they have to report their sales. So what we do is we basically manage all of that for them. When they have a new product that they want to get registered, we help them develop their label so that it's as compliant as possible in all 50 states. We license their company, we register the product, and then we manage all of their sales data and report what needs to be reported in each individual state. And that's kind of the bulk of the business itself. And for several years, it was just her and I, and we were doing that, and we were, getting new clients, and we weren't really, like I said, neither of us were really like business savvy. She'd always worked for the University of California. And, I was like 25, so I didn't really have much experience in anything at that point. And as we kind of went along, we started growing and realizing, okay, we actually have like a business here. We're more than just like a 1099 contractor to a company. It's kind of like how it started. Like it was very much like we're just an outside consultant. And we started to grow. And in around 2019, 2020, we started bringing on other people to help us because there was more work than just the two of us could do. And that kind of started to trigger this idea of like, okay, well, we should probably like start treating this like an actual company and, have all of those foundational things in place. And it took a couple years, but with time, we started thinking, okay, maybe we need a business mentor, and kind of started to explore that avenue of like a way to just kind of get some guidance on, what direction should we take in this area, and, how should we handle this, and just different things that neither of us had any experience with.
Right.
And that eventually led me to where I am now, which is back at USC in the Masters of Business for Veterans program.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you decided, I'm going to go back to school and get my MBA. And
Yes.
I'm curious, there's a lot of MBA programs. Why was it always you wanted to come back to USC, or was it just like that's how it ended up working out because of the veterans program?
Honestly, I didn't think I need to go get an MBA. What happened was I was watching a USC football game and I was thinking, man, it'd be really cool to go back to USC.
Yeah.
And like, I never
Glory
thought
days.
that, right?
Yeah.
Glory days, relive all of that fun stuff. But I never really I never wanted to go back to school. Engineering was so hard that I thought, I'm done. I don't want to do anymore.
Right.
That's
Right.
it. Like, and I have a business. Like, I don't need to go to school.
Yeah.
There's, not like I'm going to go get a degree in fertilizer regulation and compliance.
It's a very niche topic. Yeah.
Very niche. So, but I have my GI Bill. And it was kind of like, people would ask me from time to time, like, hey, are you going to use your GI Bill and go get a master's degree? And I'm like, what for? That's a lot of work. Like, I'm not just going to go get a master's degree.
Right.
Like, you actually have to do some work there. The light is doing something funny on me. I don't know if that made it better or worse.
You're fine. Oh, whatever. As long as you're comfortable, it's fine on my end.
So I was looking through the master's programs on USC's website, just curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And I saw this Masters of Business for Veterans, and I thought, what is that? And clicked on it, read through the page, and I thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I need.
That's
like,
great.
It was just like you talk about the universe aligning and like things being exactly where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be. And that was just one of those moments. And everything from that moment forward to me, to this moment in time right now, has just been green light after green light after green light. I mean, it's been, I don't want to say it was easy to get in, but I mean, it was easy in the sense that like,
well, for an
everything,
when you have an engineering degree, it is. I mean,
but like
easier.
Everything aligned for me to get in so simply. Like, I didn't have to. It just, everything about the whole process of just commuting and all of that, it was just, everything aligned, and I just knew this was the next step for me. This is where I need to be right now.
So tell me about the structure. I'm unfamiliar of the MBA for Veterans program. How is it different? Because MBAs, I know, just to give the audience a little bit of background, and this is, I don't even know all the extent of it, but there's traditional MBA programs, then there's like an evening program, then there's a program for executives, there's a program for veterans. There might be others that are out there. There's like very structured, and I'm curious, what is the structure for the veterans program and how that differs from others, if you know?
Yeah, so it's kind of most similar to an executive MBA.
Got it.
We meet every other weekend, Friday and Saturday, all day. And then the
On campus?
the MB on campus, yes. So I fly in and
Wait, where are you now? I didn't ask the question. Sorry.
I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Holy cow. How about burying the lead? You're in New Mexico.
Yes. Yeah.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, it's very cool.
So you
really
fly
like
into LA every other week.
So I fly into LA every other week, go to class all day, Friday and Saturday, and then fly back home.
Where do you stay?
At the USC hotel.
Wow. Is that part of the program, or you're putting that on the side?
No, we pay for that on our own. But as part of the GI Bill, you do get what's referred to as BAH, your basic allowance for housing.
I love acronyms in the military. Yeah, I got my BAH.
So it's for Los Angeles. It's for the USC zip code. So it's a pretty decent amount. And I would say probably by the end of the year, I'll break even on the money I got
Right.
versus what I spent on flights
Right.
and hotels.
Right. Government per
But
diems, or like there's charts and all sorts of stuff. I've seen them. Yeah. It's
right,
like, yeah, you got to around. Yeah.
kind of like that. But yeah, I mean, there are a couple of us who fly in from out of state, and it's 110% worth it. It's
That's
a
amazing.
fantastic program.
And you just started this program this past summer?
Yeah, it starts in July and I'm done in May.
Oh, like you're going to be done in 1 year with an MBA.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
It's a 1 year program. So it's intense, but basically what they told me is they kind of take out all the fluff. So an MBA
Sure.
program usually has some electives, that usually has like a travel international component to it.
Yeah.
So as a veteran, not necessarily in my experience, but most veterans' experiences, you've traveled internationally, you've been overseas.
Yeah.
That experience is kind of superfluous for us.
Yeah.
And then the elective stuff, they want it. It was geared to be like a transitional program. So
Right.
designed to help veterans transition from active duty into the business world. So I'm kind of on the fringe. There aren't as many.
Yeah. Most of your classmates are just straight out of the military?
Yeah, they've just transitioned. They're transitioning during the program, or they're about to transition when they're done with the program. There's only a handful of us who've been out for like more than several years.
Is it weird feeling old?
I'm on the younger half of
Are
the
you really?
class. Yeah.
Okay. I think
they told us the average age was 38.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'm not in the older half.
Not yet.
But it is interesting because, as you know, there are two of us who actually did our undergrad at USC, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
And a lot of the other students, there's a lot of people so then it's not all officers. It's a lot of people who actually were enlisted, got some sort of bachelor's degree online, a lot of them in order to do this program. And so it's interesting. There's a lot of backgrounds as far as like that undergraduate experience as it translates. So of course my expectations were, this is USC, it's going to be so hard, because I'm thinking like engineering school, and I get there and I'm like, oh, business school's kind of chill.
It really is.
I see why people transferred out of engineering to business when I was an undergrad. Like, I get it now.
You go into an MBA program, it's just like you've been working out in like an athletic gym for like 7 days a week, 4 days of the year, and you go in like, hey, we're going to go jog every other day.
Yeah, it's I mean, it is challenging.
There's still work.
It's definitely a lot of work.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, it just is not the same brain crunching kind of stuff as engineering.
No, you're over prepared for that program.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know.
It's a good way.
The point being that like it has been phenomenal for me. I mean, it has given me everything that I was looking for to then apply to my business so that I can make it bigger and better and more efficient, optimized.
Is there something that you've learned in the past 6 months that you're like, oh, we're changing that? Like, is there something, like, without going into too much detail, but like, is there something where you're like, oh my God, I just learned this practice that I've never used before?
Accounting. I'm dead serious.
Okay.
We took accounting from day one, and that class by itself was worth the tuition and all of the effort, because before that, my mom had been running our books. My mom doesn't have any accounting experience, and it was a mess.
Got it.
And, I didn't have any accounting experience either, but I'm a little more number minded than she is.
You can do math.
And once I took when I first took over our books, it was like, I don't even know where to start. And then I took this accounting class, and I'm like, okay, I understand now what it's supposed to look like. And I actually know how to help get it there. And now it's like piece of cake, right?
It's amazing.
So for sure that was incredible for me. Understanding strategy and marketing has been helpful. I haven't like directly applied anything yet, but I am often in those classes thinking about how it applies to my business. And with time, we'll start to kind of try and implement some of those things that I'm learning into what I do.
That's great.
Yeah.
How and why did you find yourself in Santa Fe?
Oh man, that's a long story.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know. To the point which you're comfortable sharing, like how long
Yeah,
have you
no,
how
it's a
long
good
how long
it's
have
a
you lived
good
there?
story.
How long have you lived there?
It's just not a linear route.
Yeah, it's just funny because I
Um,
didn't even think about it this whole time we're talking about. I was like, "Oh, are you up in Clovis or are you down in LA?" Those are the two options in my head based on our conversation up to this point. You're like, "I'm in New Mexico."
yeah, there's a whole
The
world out there.
enchanted land, is that what
The
it is? I
land
can't
of
remember.
the land of
The
enchantment.
land of enchantment. There you go.
Yes. So yeah, so I went back to Fresno after I got out of the Navy a couple years later. I lived there for several years. And at some point, all my friends started buying houses. And I was like,
No, I don't want to do that. I don't want
that's
to be
not
here.
really for me.
This isn't for
Yeah,
me.
I
Yeah.
don't want to live here. I don't really want to put roots down here. I don't really want to buy a house. I don't want to own that much stuff.
Wait, weren't you living in a van for a while?
I'm getting
Oh
there.
my God. So I just remember this. Sorry, it just flashed in my head. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm spoiling your story.
Jeez.
Sorry.
So I thought, I really love to travel.
Yeah.
It would be really cool to be location independent and live wherever I feel like.
Yeah.
And kind of got into, I mean, this was before van life became van life.
Yeah.
Kind of started following some people and realized, hey, there's a community of people out there who are living in vans and RVs and traveling the country and working remote jobs. Well, I already had a remote job.
So it didn't matter.
And and I'd already early on when we first started, I went and lived in Europe and lived in France for half a year with my family
Wow.
that lives there. Yeah. So like I already knew like I could be anywhere and do my job. And so rather than being like everybody else and buying a house, I went and bought an RV.
That's awesome.
And I lived in that for about 2 years, and I traveled around the country and saw tons of sites. There's still so much more to see. But I did that by myself, and that was in 2018, 2019. And
Just
then I
before
met
COVID. Just before COVID.
yeah.
Before everybody started really doing that.
Yeah, before everyone felt compelled to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I met my now boyfriend, and he lived a much more location dependent life.
Mhm.
So I kind of gave that up, and it was worth it in the end because we're still together. But actually, a year after I sold my RV, we ended up actually buying our own camper together. And that's what we live in the summers when he's working up in Montana.
Oh. Okay, so you're there in Santa Fe, and then you go up there to do the fly fishing route, but then you're remote, so it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
That's really
So
cool.
my parents moved to Santa Fe while I was living in my RV, which was really actually incredibly uncomfortable for me because all of a sudden I went from, oh yeah, I don't really have a home, but like my parents still live there, right?
You had a place to go back to.
Yeah, to like, oh, now that house, the house I grew up in, right, is gone. Like my parents don't live in a place that I know. I really felt it took it to like a whole nother level for me, which was good. It was necessary. But anyways, I started visiting them here, and kind of slowly over time fell in love with it. And my boyfriend had a house in the Midwest, and I don't like the Midwest. I was like, we could do this for a couple winters. I'm like, it also doesn't make sense because we were only there in the winter and we go to Montana in the summer, which seems like backwards.
Yes.
Not a fun place to spend the winter. I didn't know anybody out there, didn't have any friends. And then, with COVID happened like that first winter we were out there. So then I couldn't make any friends. And it was just very isolating and gray. And I was like, I'm going to do this for a couple years with you, but then we got to live somewhere else. Wow. Sorry. Wow. And I'm very fortunate because he agreed to move to Santa Fe with me.
That's amazing. Well, good. Yeah. Congratulations. It just sounds like everything is exactly where it needs to be, and that you've got all these levels of happiness and fulfillment, but not fulfilling someone else's path, which I think is like the really cool kind of button at the end of this whole thing. And you're on your own new path here, which brings me to I've been teasing it for so long. So why? So first off, like I said, you're always kind of in the back of my mind, and and I think there's updates here or there on LinkedIn that might pop up and something like that, like yada, yada, yada. But what really came in place is that Veterans Day, the president's office posts a picture of we love our veterans with you. And I'm like, going through Instagram and I'm like, that's Marcelle. I'm like, is she back on campus? And then then you kind of look around a little bit and you're like, oh, you're in this MBA program for veterans, yada, yada, yada. And that was like November 11th. And so then I'm like, I need to hear that story. I'm going to mark her down for some contact for the podcast. And so that's what I came back and said, like, no, you're not you're like, oh, I've been laying low. I don't know how you know I'm back at USC. I'm like, you're not laying low. You were on the president's Instagram. You were on the main USC Instagram feed. That's not laying low.
Well, yeah. Aside from that, I mean,
Right.
like my LinkedIn page is like, it's pretty sparse, and it's only gained new information this year just because they told us we had to.
Right. Well, as a heads up, yeah, no, you're not laying low. You got you had like a banner. Yeah, the bat signal up.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. But
That's why
yeah,
it's
we
funny.
went to
When you replied, you're like, oh, I don't even know how you knew. I'm like, come on. Everyone knows.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was shocked you were still at USC. I was like,
I
that's
know.
so
I'm
cool.
boring. I'm boring. I'm really boring.
Oh, not at all. But yeah, no, it's been really cool to connect with other veterans. It's been a really, really enriching experience for me because it was something that I only got a small glimpse of when I was in the service. And then I really kind of, because of my own feelings about what happened, I really actually kind of disconnected, and I didn't keep in touch with a lot of the people that I knew in the military. And so this experience has been very cathartic for me to reconnect with other veterans and realize I am a part of this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm very accepted by them, and it's been really cool. They seem to really look up to me. They've given me a nickname like almost from the beginning. It's hilarious. They call me their XO.
Oh, really? Executive officer?
Military jargon is the executive officer. And, at first I was like, oh my gosh, guys, stop doing that. That's silly. But, now I'm kind of embracing it and realizing that it's a term of endearment and respect really from them. And I just, like I said before, I just didn't really see that in myself. And part of it is the last 10 years or so. I mean, I've kind of lived a really hermited life. I mean, I work from home. I was living in an RV, like I've just been very like on my own. And I wouldn't say I was purposefully isolating, but I wasn't super involved with a lot of community. And part of that is just the nature of what I do for my work.
Right.
I'm at home. I'm not forced to go out and interact with a group of people. And so it's been very eye-opening for me to realize that was actually really missing from my life. And now I've got this group of people that have filled that feeling of community for me in a way that will be, I think enduring.
That's really great to hear. Well, congratulations on everything that
Thank
you've
you.
done and everything that you're doing. It's really great to hear and also to catch up with you. And I appreciate you taking time to chat with me for this long of a time period. I've monopolized your Friday afternoon.
Not at all.
We're recording this. This is not going to come out till like January or something. But we're recording this before the holidays. What are your plans for the holidays?
Laying low.
Just doing nothing. Well, traveling back and forth every other week has got to mean that you don't want to do anything when you have downtime. Is usually how I feel.
Yeah. And, my parents are here. We'll spend Christmas with them, and that'll be nice. And I've been really digging into some health things over the last year. And so I'm actually going to start a new tradition, I think, this year. And I'm going to welcome the new year in with a 3-day water fast.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's actually not as hard as it sounds. I've done 36-hour water fasts, and it's actually pretty easy.
I've done a juice fast. I don't know how much different it would be. And I remember thinking this is going to be horrible. And I remember feeling more energized than I've ever been in my life. Like I felt like I was just like amped. And I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
It was good.
So a juice fast is a little bit different, but I think the mental part is the hardest part. And when you're juice fasting, you're still getting that mental part of not eating.
Right.
And so you're getting nutrients, obviously, with a juice fast. You're getting some sugar and whatnot, and some vitamins and minerals, where with a water fast, you're not. So the likelihood is you won't feel quite as energized.
No.
But
why would you do this? This sounds like a dumb question, but like, why?
So when you start kind of digging into fasting, you learn very quickly that it's very healing for the body, because when you take away digestion from the body's requirements of things to do, it can put all of that energy into all of the other things that normally kind of get put on the back burner because your body needs that energy to digest food. And the longer you go, the more levels of healing can kind of occur, because you're giving your body even more time to divert energy to all of these other processes that kind of get pushed aside.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
party at your house on New Year's Day, then it sounds like.
Yeah, right. It's also, it kind of goes in with that very meditative. I'm a huge believer in meditation. I meditate every day, but it's a very meditative experience. It's a very introspective experience, because you're kind of in your head more than normal, as you're fighting that urge to go and eat, because that's just habitual, even though you don't really need to. I mean, humans can go like a month.
Yeah, when you're bored, you tend to want to eat, right? Like,
yeah. So it's got actually a lot of aspects to it, and I'm trying to get my boyfriend to do it with me. And if he does, that will actually add a whole nother layer of kind of like a meditative bonding experience for us.
Well, it's got to be easier when you're doing it together, because
that's
like, I'm going to go
half
get a
my
cheeseburger.
Motivation, because then I don't have to smell his cooking.
Yeah, exactly. Or just, the idea of like, it's like you're putting it in their face the whole time. You're like, I'm making a sacrifice here, and you're having an extra cheeseburger. That's not helpful.
Right. So, but it's also like, part of it too for me was, it's going to be, when you're not eating, you don't have a lot of extra energy to go out and do things. And so it's actually kind of, for me too, it's a little bit of a forced relaxation and restoration, because, we start back to school in January, and we're going to hit the ground running until May. And I know I need some time to really rest and get ready for that.
Yeah, totally. So your schedule is Fridays. What do you fly in, like Thursday night or something?
I fly in on Thursdays, and then we have class all day Friday and Saturday.
Wow. That is crazy. Well, if you ever find yourself with some time, let me know. I'm rarely there on Friday, and I'm never there.
Well, are you there on Thursdays?
No.
Do you ever go to your office?
Kind of rare. I'm usually there on Mondays, and then on occasional other days. So, but let me know if you ever find some time, and definitely want to catch up with you in a more casual way. But it's so good to see you, and so fulfilling and happy for me to see you happy and doing some really, really cool stuff, and some major successes. And I wish you all the best as you keep going through this new challenge of an MBA program. So thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing time with us.
It's been my pleasure, and I'm so grateful that you reached out. This has been really neat for me, and like I said, kind of like that whole coming full circle thing, to come back to the Viterbi roots, it's pretty neat. And I look forward to catching up with you more and hearing more about what you've been up to.
Oh yeah, nothing really. It's very boring. Compared to this, like real life you just laid out, nothing is exciting.
No, I don't believe that. But thank you. This has been really fun for me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. You too. Fight on.
Yeah, fight on.
And we're back. Thank you for that lovely episode, Paul. Oh my gosh, I can already hear the strain in my voice from not talking for a second. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. But thank you again for bringing us
It's good. It's
a
good.
lovely episode.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My favorite thing about Marcelle is her laugh, and I love getting her to laugh, because it's one of the most infectious laughs that you can possibly hear.
I'm sure the audience will love hearing it throughout the episode, because it's always fun to have alumni and seeing where they're at now and what they made out of their USC experience and how they've kind of continued on after. And a lot of them end up finding their way back here somehow too, which is really cool.
I think it's what's important to do, and this is why I think I might have brought it up in the conversation with Marcelle, is that I think so often undergraduate students or prospective undergraduate students, high school students that might be listening to this, think that you get X degree and you then do X career. And that's never the case. Like that's what I love about these alumni conversations is that we are highlighting so many different people that have taken so many different paths with so many different variations on their path, and how success is defined in so many different ways. And even in the conversation, you can hear how, as they are becoming adults, they are redefining their version of success as they go. And some, even them, they had plans what they thought they would do, and it rarely worked out that way. But it doesn't mean they're not successful. And this was a great version of that, in addition to every other one that we've done. So I'm really glad that Marcelle was able to join us and share her story, because she has such a great story and does some really cool things, especially in addition to all the conversation we had about wellness and taking care of themselves and understanding how to navigate challenges down the road.
I feel like I hear that a lot from alumni that come back to visit too, about the redefinition of what you view as success.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of seniors go through that too. Like when they're nearing the end, they're like, okay, I've been working towards X goal basically from the time you're like in elementary school until college, and then like what comes next. So you kind of have to create your own new definition now.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the weird back end of a grading system in a K through 12 education is that you're constantly defined by a quantitative bar.
Yeah.
And that's not how life works. And some people, I think, inappropriately apply that to like a salary, which, it has merit. That conversation has merit and whatever, but there's different levels of fulfillment and what someone does and why they do it and how their life is being lived. And there's just some really interesting dynamics here. And also what someone thinks they thought, a bunch of weird past tense verbs there. What someone had believed they wanted to do at a time ends up not being what they want to do in their real time. And they have discovered other elements down that road, if that makes any sense.
No, I totally agree with that. I think it kind of relates to the conversation we had last semester about trying to find hobbies in your senior year, because it's like, what do you continue on after? Which is in the era I'm in right now. I need to
You're
find
in the
my
hobbies era?
Yeah, I need to find hobbies because I'm graduating, or technically I have an extra semester in the fall, so I have a little more leeway.
Okay.
But I'm trying to find things that I'll keep continuing on after I graduate as well.
Love it. Love it. What's rising to the top?
I'm in a ceramics class right now.
Sweet.
So that's at the top of the list. I might sign up for one of the sewing classes in the theater school. I'm not sure yet. My schedule is still a
Sewing
little
class
flexible.
in the theater school.
Yeah.
Like costumes and things?
Yeah, it's like a corset construction. They usually have a costume construction class, but I don't think it's offered right now. But I want to get into sewing a little bit more. I can hand sew, but I want to learn how to use a machine.
Oh my God, completely unrelated, but it just happened in a meeting the other day. Not 100% confirmed. Probably shouldn't be talking about it, but it's not that important. But you brought it up. There's a 50-50 chance that we might give our admitted student presentation on our big open house for the admitted students in April. That one big day that we do.
Yeah.
We might do that in Bing Theater.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, because we're trying to move everybody around the campus because we have a huge group that comes, and the engineering school, we don't have rooms that size.
Yeah.
So like last year we did it in Town and Gown, and that was ginormous. And so we might do it in there, or we might do it in Bing Theater, which I've never done before. So
that's really cool.
You brought up the theater school, and I'm like, I think we're gonna do it in the theater. We have like lighting and a stage, and I don't know what we're gonna do.
Production.
Yeah, so we're gonna expect you to create costumes for us now that you
I got it.
We got to work on some tap dancing up there and things.
Yeah, I can from my hip hop experience back in the day, and then I'll have my costumes there, and then maybe I'll throw in like some ceramic pots for staging.
Yeah,
we'll see how it goes.
do it up.
Yeah.
Do it up. Do it to it. Yeah. So when you brought that up, I was like, oh my God, I just had this discussion the other day about Bing. And I'm like, because Bing Theater is the theater for everybody. It's the theater school's main production performance venue. And it's a big theater with like 500 something seats. And I'm like, I've been in there, but I've never done anything.
Been the one on stage.
I've never been the one on stage. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I was on stage in there as a student once.
Oh, okay. What was it for?
Orientation.
Oh, interesting.
But I was on stage for like 2 minutes. That was like but I remember that was my very first orientation. Now I'm having flashbacks right now. Yeah, that was the only time I've ever been in Bing Theater. And it was like, went on stage, said hi, and walked off.
It's okay. You had your moment. Now, full circle.
Have you been on stage in Bing Theater?
I haven't.
Have you been on stage in Bovard? Because Bovard's bigger, but.
I haven't been on any stage at USC before.
How dare you?
Maybe this will be my year. I'll find a way up there. I don't know how.
I was on Bovart's stage multiple times.
Oh wow,
I did
doing
multiple
what?
things at Bovard. Orientation was a lot of it because we did a lot of
Okay.
orientation. Every
Oh, that makes
orientation,
sense.
when I worked in
That
orientation
makes sense.
as a student, like you would go onto stage, and then
Mm.
we'd have to give what they called skits, which are just like
Oh,
mock
okay.
scenarios that that students might encounter in college, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
created characters and did like a play. It was
yeah.
ridiculous. And
That sounds
then
fun.
I even performed once. There's a video somewhere.
Oh,
I think I've talked about
wow.
this. There has to be a video somewhere. I've never seen it.
Mm.
But back in the day when Songfest used to, have you heard of Songfest?
No.
The Greek Rose back in the time had a giant fundraiser, and it was a
Uh,
giant performance of music, dancing, and singing, whatever. And like,
that sounds cool.
50 years ago, it was held in the Hollywood Bowl. Like it was like a huge
Oh,
deal.
wow.
And it's like the one fraternity house and the one sorority house would get together and put
Yeah.
on a performance. And then it was like a competition, like who won best performance, most
Mm.
creative, everything else. And it was, silly in nature, and a lot of colleges do. It's not unique.
Yeah.
Um, but I performed at Songfest,
Did you
and
have to sing
not sing. No, I
or?
don't sing. It was a dance.
Okay, okay,
It's
okay.
going to make sense in a second. But it was because the benefits of Songfest, what like the proceeds, it was a fundraiser
Yeah.
for Troy Camp.
Oh,
And
okay.
so all the houses got together to put on this big show to
Mm.
raise money for Troy Camp. And in
That
that
makes more
year,
sense.
they asked us as Troy Camp to see if they can bring the kids. And I don't
Oh.
remember how we ended up doing this, but the conversation was, what if we brought the kids up and performed? Like, what if we did an act? Because it was always like,
Oh,
like
wow.
lip syncing and dancing, or like it was some sort of performance,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And I said, what if we brought the kids? I don't think I said this, but maybe someone along the way.
Mm.
And I might have been a sophomore or junior at the time. And I was like, I'll do it. Let's do it. And so at the time, this is really dating me. Was it 1998, maybe?
Oh, wow. You're ancient, Paul. Come
I
on
am. It
now.
was in the 1900s. It was in a different century. Um, I'm probably sharing too much. We we put together this thing, we put together this like dance lip
Mm.
sync thing. Um, go with me on this one. It was the hottest thing at the time, and it was
I'm sure it was.
Will Smith's Men in Black and
Okay.
Getting Jiggy with It.
Oh,
Are
no,
you
I see how that would be relevant at the time.
looking back on it? Not at all interesting, but at the time, these were hot, hot jams. Like this was
Yeah,
it. This was it, right? And
like
so I'll give you the setting. And again, if someone's listening and there's a video of this of Songfest '98, I want to see it because I've never seen the video.
we'll
I
leave the
was
comments
told,
open in case anyone has a video.
I was told we tore the house down. I was told
Okay.
that everyone went nuts, and I was told that because we were just like a little show in between, is that we should
Yeah.
have won the whole thing.
Mm.
Not my words. People came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh my God," because it was just like let's just see who the kids are. And then they're saying like, "Oh, you should have won that," because we weren't in competition. I mean, we weren't trying to win. We just brought the kids out. So it was me
Yeah.
and one other guy, and we had like 20 elementary school kids from the local area, which are our campers, and we
Uh-huh.
know them. And we basically did 2 weeks of rehearsals with the kids,
Okay.
and it started out with everything's dark
Yeah.
and the lights slowly come up, and all of a sudden, it's the song "Sunglasses at Night." Do you know that song?
No.
It's like I wear my sunglasses
Okay,
at night. So
okay.
like basically all the kids are like kind of like
Reliving the
slow.
performance right
Right?
now
Oh,
live.
it's so cool. And so like the kids are just, it looks like it's just kids, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, very slowly, they start putting on sunglasses and slowly jamming because it's like an 80s song. It's like really,
Yeah.
really jamming. And then all of a sudden, power cuts, and lights go down.
Uh-huh.
And then the opening for Men in Black starts happening, which is this
Oh,
eerie, like,
wow. Yeah, yeah,
and then it comes back up, and there's me and this other guy in front of them with our sunglasses on in full black suits.
Oh my God.
And then there was a Men in Black dance, which if you don't know it, it's like it
Yeah,
goes into Men in
yeah.
Black. And then all of a sudden you get like a scratch on the record, and the
Mm.
whole thing turns into Getting Jiggy with It. We rip off the suits. The kids were wearing black shirts. They take off their black shirts. everyone's wearing like super neon colors.
Oh
And
my God,
then
this was a
went
whole
into, oh, dude, you
performance.
have no idea. And then we went into Getting Jiggy with it. And Getting Jiggy with it had a certain dance that you did at the time.
Mhm.
And so all the kids had to do that dance. And it's just like moving their legs back. And it was just so hilarious.
I
And
would pay
again,
to see this performance. This is
I can't see
amazing.
anything. I have sunglasses on. It's in Bovard. It's Phil. I can't
Yeah.
see anybody out there. I can't see the kids behind me because we're facing everything. I don't know how it's
Mm.
going. I don't know
Yeah.
how it went. I want to see the video of this. I've asked so many people, I'm like, hey, do you have video? Because there was a video that was made
Mhm.
somewhere in that world
Yeah.
has video because they
There has to
purchased
be
the
someone
video.
floating around somewhere.
I've tried to ask for it multiple times and I can't
Maybe it'll
find it.
resurface. Maybe this podcast will be the reason it resurfaces.
I'd like it to be because I just want to see it.
Yeah.
Because
Let's
I
relive the
honestly
glory days.
Because I honestly believe it wasn't that good. Like, I just think it was so cute having the kids
Yeah.
somewhat look like they knew what they were doing. It had nothing
Mhm.
to do with us, but like there was a lot of ego that I came out of that thing with because I was told that it was so amazing. And
Wait, and
I
did you win the competition?
no, we weren't in the competition. We were just like,
Oh,
hey, by the way, let's show off the kids. And in previous
got
years, the
it.
kids would come
Okay,
out and
okay.
wave. And I
Yeah,
said, no, let's
yeah.
do something. And like we had fun with it.
Yeah,
And
okay, wait, that's
we
smart.
weren't in the competition, but people were
Mhm.
saying like if you were, that would
You would
have
have won it.
won
Yeah.
it. Again, not my words, but again,
Just the rest of the people. Just the audience is speaking their
yeah,
truth.
it's
Yeah.
it's kids being cute, being doing kids things, right?
Yeah.
That's why I would have won it. But in my head, it was like no, it's because of that
It was
dancing.
all my credit. Yeah.
It was that for sure. Anyways, I don't know how we got. Oh, we got it because we haven't been on. It just made me flash back to what those stages were like,
Basically,
and
I
I'm
just
like,
plan a Panhellenic competition to get myself onto stage and then like bring the kids along too.
as you should. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll put you on stage at the open house.
Oh
Then you
wow.
could be on Bing Theater stage.
I'd be honored, but I'd also be scared, but I'd be honored.
No, it's just like your usual
Yeah.
student panel,
Yeah, yeah.
but you're just with a spotlight.
Yeah. I'll have sunglasses on too.
Yeah, there we go. Start learning the getting jiggy with it dance. Go
We
when you're
just break
done.
out to flash mob.
When you're done, go look at it. You're gonna see it and how ridiculous
Okay.
because that getting jiggy dance is ridiculously
I'll
silly.
make a note of it.
Oh man. Well, I don't know what else we're supposed to talk about. I think that's pretty good. Oh, it's hobbies. You were talking about hobbies. Weren't
Oh,
you gonna do
yes.
pickleball? Let me talk because I was talking
I
about
took
pickleball.
pickleball last spring.
Got it.
I've done pickleball. I've done like a music industry class. That wasn't really for me, I've realized. Um, what else do I want to take? Oh, I wanted to do the special effects makeup class, but
Oh yeah.
it's at like 9 a.m. on Fridays. As a senior, I'm not
Oh,
really
that's
trying
hurting
to do
your
all that.
yeah, that's harshing on your vibe there. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, I can't sign up for it. Maybe that's something independently teach myself. But we'll see. We'll see.
All right. Well, I think that is a fabulous, way too much sharing on my end episode. And thank you for listening if you lived through that. Other than that, if you're still here, we'll be back next week with another new episode of Viterbi Voices. Thanks, everybody. Bye.